Hey guys, what's going on? It's Ben here. I'm back again today doing another video. The subject of today's video is on Survivor, and particularly what Survivor going forward should basically leave behind as far as things that they've done in the past, or things that they should get rid of, or just concepts in general that to me haven't really worked for the game, and that Survivor just shouldn't keep returning to, or should just leave in the past where they are. The nature of this video is going to be negative, but let me just make a disclaimer at the beginning. I love Survivor, one of my favorite shows all time. I've seen every one of the 40 seasons. I absolutely love it. Even the worst season of Survivor, I do enjoy to some extent. The very worst ones are kind of a slog sometimes, but overall, I love the show. And I think that Survivor has gotten to a place where they don't just want to do the same thing every year. They don't want it to be the exact same game. They put in twists, they put in different wrinkles to the game that make it distinct and different and make one season stand out compared to another season. And they just are trying to become more creative and get more interesting with the gameplay overall. I think some of these have been good, like the invention of the immunity idol was technically a twist to the game. Like that was a good one. There are good ones, like they went from Final 2 to Final 3. That is technically a twist. They did things like tribe swaps in Season 3. That was the first time they ever did the tribe swap. That was technically a twist. Obviously, the twists and advantages and different aspects that they've added to the game have gotten much more complex and convoluted. And today I'm going to be talking about the ones that I don't think work well for the game and things that they should not continue to bring forward. Now, keep in mind, a lot of these, some of them are probably guaranteed to continue going forward, but some of them I don't think should and probably won't return, so that's a good thing. But it's just me going through, and it's pretty informal. I don't even have like a list written down. This is kind of just off the top of my head, but I want to give credit where credit's due. I heard this on the Survivor Specialist podcast where they had Peridium on as a guest star. They basically covered this in a long, free-form podcast of talking for like close to 2 hours about what doesn't work on Survivor and what they shouldn't continue going forward. So I'm kind of doing an abbreviated version of that, just for my own personal lists, and we're going to go from there. So in no particular order, I think things that are probably already never coming back that I am glad about. Redemption Island. I think they're pretty much done with Redemption Island. If you're not familiar, they did it in seasons 22, 23, and 27, and they were going to do it in 29, but then changed their mind last minute. So Redemption Island, if you haven't seen the seasons with it, it is basically where it's like double elimination, where once you get voted out, you can compete in challenges against other eliminated players, and if you win the challenge, you stay in the game, and then eventually there's a final Redemption Island challenge where the winner gets to re-enter the regular game with the other people. I think that this concept needs to go away, and actually, in a broader sense, I want to see them get rid of any sort of season or twist where eliminated players can get back into the game, because I feel like that cheats what Survivor really should be. Survivor should be about you stay in the game not through some weird exception, but through your own skill and know-how and manipulation of other people, or maybe not even manipulation, but just social bonds of gaining people's trust and whatnot. And it shouldn't be about messing up, getting voted out, technically losing the game, and then getting like a get out of jail free card. So I guess I started with saying Redemption Island, but to me also Edge of Extinction should go away. That's why I have Edge of Extinction on screen as far as the cast and the season overall. I think Edge of Extinction should definitely go away. I don't think they were ever going to do the Outcast Return Challenge like they did in Pearl Islands, where they almost had like a tribe of people who were voted out try and return to the game. And here's why they should get rid of those concepts. I'm going to review every season really briefly where that happens. Pearl Islands. Lil and Burton get back into the game. Lil gets really deep into the game, and honestly, it's just a person who was so bad at Survivor, but because she got dropped into the merge, people knew she had no shot of winning, so she got very, very far in the game, because she was a flat out GOAT, and so people wanted her to stay in the game once she was at the merge. But that kind of player doesn't usually ever get to the merge because they can't help their initial tribe, so they normally get voted out very early. So basically, once Lil got back into the game, people knew that she had no shot of winning, so they let her stay in the game. So it really kind of actually messed up the trajectory of a lot of players in Pearl Islands because Lil was favored to stay in over them. Burton is probably the least offendable returnee from any of these islands ever, and he's probably the prototype for why they wanted to continue doing it like Redemption Island. He had a fairly good run afterwards and got eliminated post merge in the middle of the game, but didn't really do anything egregious. But still, if you get voted out, to me, you just don't deserve to return. If we go to Season 22, Redemption Island itself was a complete non-factor. Nobody who ever returned from it made a lick of difference in the game, and the people who returned got voted out instantly when they did return. So to me, again, pretty much the players who weren't on Redemption Island pretty much made it pointless to even have that as a concept. If then we go to Season 23 with Ozzy, again, I think this is the season that it probably works the most successfully for a player on Redemption. Ozzy, of course, basically lets himself be voted out and encourages his team to vote him out, and basically spends most of the game on Redemption Island and returns at I believe it's Final 5, where then he gets to Final 4. And although he almost won, if he would have won the game, the view of Redemption Island would have been very different, because I think people would have thought it was like a legit way to win the game. But even still, Ozzy was only in the game for like 20 days out of the 39, I believe. And to me, he did not deserve to win at the end if he were to even get there, because let's face it, he didn't play for most of the game at that point, most of the critical game. Season 27, same to 22, it didn't really make a difference. The people who came back from Redemption Island got voted out pretty quickly once they did return, so it didn't really make an impact there. And let's see, what other seasons? 38, obviously, it plays a massive part of the game. Edge of Extinction does, and it pretty much alters the entire outcome of the season. The two biggest characters, or the biggest character on the season, was a result of Edge of Extinction, and then the ultimate endgame. I'm not going to spoil it, but it was very, very impacted by Edge of Extinction. So to me, I just think it just messes with traditional Survivor. Same with Season 40. It very much messes with the endgame of the season. And even the person who gets in at the merge from Edge of Extinction, Tyson, he just basically gets voted out almost instantly. So again, like, it didn't make a big difference for him, and they plopped a person in at Final 6 who then had advantages that allowed them to get very far, and it really altered the end game. And to me, it just is like, it just muddies the game and makes it less pure, because it's like you can kind of win from this alternative way where it's not exactly, to me, legitimate, where you're kind of actually playing a different game besides Survivor. You're playing, can I sit around and have the patience to get a chance to come back and play, which to me is a different game. So to me, yeah, I'd say get rid of it. It's not pure Survivor. Other things that they should get rid of. Fire making challenge. It's terrible. I hate the Final Four fire making, and here's why. Final Four fire making is basically them trying to make the end game more exciting and be able to have better players in the end game, because their fear is that too many goats are getting to the end game, and fire making gives the big dogs a chance to take their fate into their own hands and get themselves into the finale. But let's look at that concept. The only time where that was really the case was the season that everybody hated where it happened, which was Season 35, where it was a total blindside that they had the fire making challenge, and everybody basically who's ever watched that season has hated that twist. Season 36, we knew about it, and again, it just, to me, like, yes, Wendell does it and he gets to the end then, but it kind of discounts Dom winning final immunity, because, like, what's the point of Dom winning that if then people don't even really, like, people in the final jury seem to care more about fire making than final immunity. Like, almost if you win final immunity, it's come to a point where people don't view that positively because they think like, oh, you didn't have to make fire. And here's the problem with that. So season 38 and season 40 are obviously two of the best examples to me. Season 38, the person who wins final immunity ends up doing the big thing, and I'm gonna have to spoil this here, but the person who wins final immunity does also make fire. They give up their immunity necklace and they say, to build up my resume, I'm also gonna make fire. And if I'd win it, then obviously they look like they're a genius. If they don't, they're voted out and they're a dummy. Or not voted out, but forced out of the game. And so season 40, that was heavily impacted because in season 40, the person who won final immunity was from the edge of extinction. And people had this mindset on the jury of, okay, if you're the person from the edge, the only way that you can win a season now is if you do everything possible in your power. So you have to either idle your way to the end, win out immunities till the end, but even if you do that, you have to then also make fire and win. And here's my ultimate problem with that. Making fire should be a last resort. If you are being forced to make fire, that essentially means that you really shouldn't be in the game, and if the game was as it normally was, you would have been voted out in a sense, because if you are the person that wins immunity in a typical Survivor season before fire making, that is a big boon in favor of you, and you are getting to the end, and you're pretty much the last person to look positive to the jury. Whereas with fire making, it's basically like having a last final immunity challenge that only 2 people are allowed to participate in, and the winner is the only person to advance to the final tribal council, and as a result, they just look way better. To me, it almost would be like, let's say you had a final 2 instead of a final 3, and what if the game was like, okay, we're at the final 3, we're gonna have an immunity challenge for one of the people to get into final 2, and then so the winner gets in. Like, let's say in Micronesia, you had the final 3, and the winner of the final challenge gets in. So we have Amanda get in. Then we have a fire making challenge between Parvati and Sari. That would have been way more lame, because then people wouldn't have even cared that Amanda won the final immunity. Ultimately, what I'm getting at is, if you're forced into fire making, it's actually meaning that you're in a bad position in the game, but because it's exciting and entertaining, people think that it's a resume booster. But technically, being in the fire making means that you're in such a bad position in the game that you nearly got voted out, but basically because of a caveat that Survivor executive producers have created, you aren't yet voted out of the game. And again, it kind of gets back to that whole edge of extinction or Redemption Island concept, where it's almost like a double elimination, where, okay, you technically should be out of the game now, but because you were able to win a challenge, you get back into not only into the game, but into final tribal council, which just, it's the only thing in Survivor where basically you can ignore your social game, but if you can make fire better than somebody else, you can get into the final 3. And it's like, why do we even have a final immunity challenge if we're going to have fire making? Why not just have the final 4 all do fire making, and the last one to do it is the one that gets voted out? Because to me, it basically eliminates like a lot of the social game at final 4. And it makes the person who wins immunity look bad, because people don't care as much about that as they do about fire making. But then again, as I've repeatedly said here now, fire making is something that person is technically doing out of desperation. It shouldn't be viewed positively. So that's why I don't like it. Okay, other things that I don't like. Sorry, that one was a long-winded one, but to me, the fire making final 4 is just to me, that might be the most egregious thing Survivor's done. I just really don't like it. The final tribal council format now is also very bad. So they switched it after Millennials v Gen X. So Game Changers is the first season that they did this, and basically they do it where it's like an open forum, and the jury can just like have open discussion, and there's no order or structure really to it. The only structure is that Jeff will basically say, right now talk about outwit, right now talk about outplay, right now talk about outlast, and then the jury has basically an open forum. Anybody can speak at any time. They actually can just speak amongst themselves and don't even have to talk to the panelists, or the finalists technically. I hate this concept, and here's why. Okay, so if you have this open forum where basically there are technically no rules to how you're talking, the most dominant personalities are going to just speak over those smaller voices. In the regular final tribal format that Survivor did for the first 33 seasons, every juror basically had equal power in that they all got their one shot to talk and say whatever they want. And essentially, yes, when they're up there and they ask their one question, they can talk for as long as they want, but essentially each juror kind of felt like they had equal weight. Whereas with the open forum, it feels like some jurors might talk the whole time, and so they have a lot more sway. Like, for instance, in Edge of Extinction, Rick Devens and Kelly and Aubrey and David Wright, they are the ones talking for most of the time from the jury, and somebody like Ron doesn't even speak, I don't think. And so like it just makes it where like certain people in the jury's opinion becomes way more important than others, and I like the concept where like every juror is kind of seen as equal. What else isn't good about the new format is that in a typical court case, the jury doesn't deliberate and decide in front of the defendant. Typically, a jury, they ask questions, they gather information, but then they make the decision behind closed doors, and they discuss amongst themselves behind closed doors, and then they decide the winner, which is how Survivor was for the first 33 seasons. And now they're kind of flipping it on its head and saying, okay, what we really want to do is like talk in front of the contestants, let them know what we think of them, and then they can try and improve their standing with the jury by hearing what they actually think in a more open, candid fashion. But to me, that really eliminates a lot of the previous social game, because part of your social game should be, having to reckon with how you treated people, and not them saying, like, not just having them say, this is what you did bad to me, how do you respond to that? And it almost seems like the new format is more so that if somebody holds a grudge, they can more openly talk about it and defend themselves better. But I think that's more of like the fault of their social game for having people hold grudges. I just don't like it. And then the other part about that format I don't like is the way that Jeff conducts it. He says, the first section, he says, this is the outwit portion of the game, which he says is both social and strategic, which to me is categorically false. There are really three concepts of Survivor, and they are: one, strategy, of course, the chess player kind of part of the game. There's number two, social bonds, which to me is forming friendships and trust and getting people on your side more through like social soothing rather than like strategy and blindsides and cutthroat nature. So to me, those are two distinctly different things, but Jeff basically combines them into one. Big mistake. Number two, he says, how did you outplay? Which, essentially he's referring to like, he actually gets this one completely wrong. He says like, this one to me, he says like, it's basically how did you survive the elements better than other people, which to me is so, and like how did you survive 39 days better than other people, which is so baffling to me. Outplay is clearly like how did you perform in challenges, and then maybe like how did you work hard to find idols, but outplay is definitely like mainly a challenge beast kind of category. So Jeff completely botches that in all the seasons. And then he says, outwit, outplay, outlast. He basically says like, what's your narrative for winning the season? Like, do you have a compelling story that goes along with you getting to day 39? And to me, this is so idiotic, because it's Survivor saying like, it's basically like Survivor telling the jury what is important to be a winner. And that is so stupid, because there are people who have won Survivor in the past who weren't necessarily compelling television. Kim Spradlin, not really a compelling season whatsoever, but she did really good. Brian Heidick, really good winner, really not compelling season, and not compelling way to watch it. Same with, a lot of people point to Earl Cole and say a great winner, but kind of a flat personality. There's tons of different winners who haven't really been like charismatic or like super, super interesting. Vecepia is another one who Jeff Probst says he really doesn't like because she's, quote, boring. But it's really unfair to say to a person in Final Tribal, like, you only deserve to win if you have a really good narrative slash story that will wrap up the season nicely. And to me, outwit should be strategy, outplay should be challenges, and outlast should be your social bonds. Jerry Manthe got voted out of both not All Stars. She got voted out of Australian Outback because she was really annoying. She got on people's nerves. Same with Kimmy in Outback. Um, and to me, that's the outlast part, is that can you be an agreeable enough person and have good enough social bonds that people won't vote you out? And clearly, like, Jerry and Kimmy didn't have that, so they got voted out. Um, that is the outlast. And Jeff and the producers as a whole, it feels like they're kind of just telling the jury this is what's important to win Final Tribal. And if the final finalist doesn't agree with these three concepts, then don't vote for them. And I just hate that the producers and people behind the scenes are trying to be way more involved in who wins the game. Okay, so I spent a lot of time on those last two. Sorry about that. I just am very heated and hate that Survivor has gone that direction. I'm pretty sure that both of those things are going to stay for a while. I think the fire making is here like to stay permanently, and I think Final Tribal, it's probably here to stay permanently, but I'm hoping that they go back to the original sense at some point, the original style. Other things that should never return, these are easy ones. The Medallion of Power, pointless. Fire tokens, they could potentially be interesting, but they've got to do a complete overhaul of how they work, because literally the people who were still in the game at the end and Winners at War were saying, like, what was the point of fire tokens, because they didn't benefit the people. They only benefited people on exile or extinction. They didn't benefit people in game in any way, technically. I mean, in very, very limited ways, but they just gotta completely redo how they do fire tokens. But I think that they could have an interesting part of the game. They need to go back to changing locations. I've talked about this in a previous video, but one of my favorite parts about Survivor is that they went to a bunch of different locations, and they quit doing that, and they got to go back. I hate that they just film in Fiji every year. It's pointless. We see the same beach every season now for like the last 7 seasons of Survivor, and it's really boring at this point. I love the really unique locations like Africa and Gabon and Borneo and China and like Guatemala. I mean, Guatemala was really depressing when they were there, but it was interesting. I get that they like just the sandy beach look for every season, but it gets stale really fast. I don't think that they should have people play Survivor more than 3 times. That's probably the most interesting one I have to say that probably people haven't thought about before. So people like Cirie, Boston Rob, Coach, Russell, those people should never play again. You should only be able to play if you've played 2 times or less for a returning player season. So I just think that it gets stale seeing these same people over and over and over again. And like, why has Cirie played 4 times? Because Jeff is unwilling to bring back Vecepia to even play a second time. Why has somebody like, I don't know, why has Ozzy played 4 times? Because Survivor's unwilling to bring back lesser known challenge beasts who are interesting. Like, why did they bring back Ozzy so many times, but they didn't bring back Terry until like 10 years after he was on the show? It's just weird stuff like that, where it seems like Survivor really picks favorites and then just pushes them over and over and over again. Like, for instance, why did Boston Rob play 5 times when after his second time he was pretty much, his legacy on Survivor to me was set? I don't get it. So I just think there are so many compelling people who have been on the show. It's a disservice to kind of just go back to the same pool of people who were in. It seems like they just can't get away from the cast of heroes and villains to some extent. Like, they just keep bringing back Sandra, Rob, Parvati, Cirie. These are people that I would be glad to never see play the game again. I think they're really great legends, but I don't want to see them play again. And even if they have a legend season, I don't want to see them play again. They're so played out. Like, why has Boston Rob played 5 times and Sester Nino has played twice? It's just baffling to me. And why has Boston Rob played 5 times when on his original season he was booted at number 10 and Sean Rector got to 5 and hasn't even played a second time? It's just mind-numbing to me. So yeah, I would say no player should ever play more than 3 times. I'm trying to think of anything else. Those are the main things. I'm ranting at this point, but there's a lot of things in Survivor that have really, to me, kind of dampened the most recent seasons. But they can turn it around, and it's a great show. Even the most recent seasons. Oh, I know what I thought of. They really need to scale back the twists, advantages, and idol stuff. Some seasons of Survivor could essentially be called Survivor and then : scavenger hunt, because it's just every episode in the after the merge happens, it's just people looking for idols and walking through the woods looking for idols. Although it was exciting the first time when Russell Hantz did it in Samoa and he found an idol like every episode, we've seen like 15 seasons where that's all people do in the merge, and honestly, it gets boring at this point. And so I am like tired of just idol. I really am relieved that season 39, the winner played a relatively advantageless, idol-less game. It was really fun that like somebody played old school and actually won the show. And like idol nullifier, get rid of that crap. It's so blah. Or legacy advantage from what Sarah and Sierra had in Game Changers, get rid of that crap. Pure Survivor entertains people, and you don't need all these fancy twists. You can have a couple of idols in the game. I hate that Advantage Geddon happened in Game Changers at Final 6. I hate that at Final 6 in Second Chance, like everybody was immune except for one person or something like that. There should only ever be one idol in the game at a time to me, and I just hate that like there are points now where it seems like 4 different people can have what are essentially idols. And as I say, fire tokens I think could be used in a way that help that, and they could be like the one kind of twist or advantage that exists in the game, but get rid of everything else. Like there should be one idol in the game at a time, and then there should be fire tokens, and get rid of all the other stuff. That's all I got, guys. It's long-winded, it was ranty, but I'm glad you stuck it out. And as I say, I do love Survivor a lot, and I just think that there are some minor things that they could do, like get rid of all that stuff I talked about, and the show would be so much better. So I'll talk to you soon. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time. Bye.